Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of Energy Society and the Middle East. It is week 3, and we are reading and discussing Sadia Zahedi's 50 Million Rising. I hope you've read the first couple of chapters or so. It is a tremendously informative book and very easy to read, very up-to-date, sort of cutting edge. I'm excited that we get to understand this very important subject, which I don't think gets enough attention. So I'm going to get right to it. You will recall in our earlier readings that, so this is in Michael Ross's The Oil Curse, chapter 4. I'm going to read a little bit. This is from page 117. He says, under these conditions, the conditions he describes, oil can have the opposite effect as manufacturing. While manufacturing draws women out of the home and into the workforce, oil wealth encourages them to remain at home, erasing a key pathway towards economic and political empowerment. One of the very, very important thesis arguments that Ross makes is that oil sort of suppresses women, it keeps them at home, rather than service jobs that bring women out. And if you think of World War II, for example, in much of the Western world and in the US, for example, that's what really empowered women, is that they had to come out and to work into factories because the men were all fighting in the war. So, of course, there are a couple of other indicators that Ross discusses in this regard. He also mentions, this is on page 124, how can we be sure that women in the Middle East are impeded by oil, not by Islam, or the region's distinctive culture and history? And then he goes into some statistics. Now, this is particularly complicated and thorny, if you ask me, right? What is it that has historically kept women, shall we say, outside of the economy or not contributing as fully as possible in a number of these economies in the Middle East and North Africa? Ross will tell you that it's oil, right? And if we read Sadia Zahedi, she'll tell you something similar to that, right? But it's not exactly that. Culture plays more of a role. And I want to read really, really briefly from her book. This is now 50 Million Rising, page 23. As the benefits of girls' education transmit across generations, entire communities begin to realize its value and reap its rewards. Development professionals consider girls' education a strategic development investment because it brings a wide range of benefits, not only for the girls themselves, but for their children, their communities, and the society in terms of economic growth. Education for young women has been described by the World Bank as the single greatest investment a developing country can make. The reverse is also true. The exclusion of girls from education considerably hinders the production potential of an economy and its overall development. In the Asia-Pacific region, it has been estimated that between $16 billion and $30 billion is lost annually as a result of gender gap in education, etc., etc. This is very interesting. When we first began this course, guys, we looked at oil, especially oil, as a strategic sort of reserve and an investment and a means by which to basically build an entire economy. Now, Zahedi is telling us that the greatest investment, strategic investment, look at that terminology again, is girls' education. It's women themselves. It's the half of the population which in much of the world has not been sort of unleashed, right? So we're learning that now in this book. And it relates directly to Ross's thesis. I think it's very informative. I think they're onto something. I want you guys to think about that. I want you guys to think about the untapped potential of women in Pakistan, in Egypt, in the Emirates, right, in the Gulf countries, Iran, Turkey, etc., and how this is a story that's unfolding. When Ross was writing in 2011, 2012, this was still a little bit distant. The revolution had started. And now in 2018, Zahedi is telling us that this revolution is in full swing and that it's not a blip on the radar, but that there are 50 million. 50 million rising refers to the number of women in the Muslim majority countries that are rising, that are now, and they're entering the workforce. Of course, what are some of the hindrances? What are some of the challenges? Is it just oil? Is it religion? Can we blame simply Islam for this? I don't think you can do that, but how much of a role does religion play? can you blame culture? Right? I think that culture plays a large role, but you'll have to see what Zahedi says. Are there other factors? Foreign sort of influences. What about just modernization? What about the divorce rate sort of increasing worldwide? I want you guys to think about all these things as you come to a renewed and more cutting edge understanding of women contributing to an economy, especially in the greater Middle East and in the Muslim world more broadly. And I want us to understand it properly. I don't want any simple sort of solutions. I don't want you guys to also sort of propose, oh, you know what's wrong? It's just this. It's this. Clearly it's not, right? It's part oil, it's part culture, it's part patriarchy, it's all these things. So those are my sort of initial thoughts as we shift this very important discussion. Zahedi's book is great. You'll be reading over 200 pages, but I think it's a very fast and easy read. There are lots of stories in here. And the stories, of course, are they're what stick in our minds the most. So enjoy the book, learn as much as you can, take good notes, and I look forward to hearing back from you every day. Thank you.